Hey everyone, it's Ivan, gearbadger.com, out here to bring you another gear review, and today, talking lights and lasers. This little guy right here, which is the SureFire X400 Vampire. Big picture, what are we talking about? As I mentioned, light and laser. SureFire X, basically a designator for pistol-mounted lights. So, for example, X300, X300 Ultra, both pistol-mounted white lights. This right here is the X400, meaning it is both a light as well as a laser, but it's a Vampire. So while they do have a X400, which is a visible white light, and a red laser, visible, this is the Vampire version of that. So you actually have a bezel, the head of this, you can switch back and forth to include off, and you can go from white light to infrared light, and the built-in laser on this one is infrared. So good for all those nighttime activities. Which brings us to how we use this thing. At night, under night vision. So basically using this thing so that you could actively, one, either just illuminate something, if maybe you're somewhere really dark, whether it's inside a structure, something along those lines, and there's not enough ambient light for your night vision to pick up, you can use the infrared illuminator, illuminate things, or to actually actively engage something, you can use that laser. So under nods, turn this thing on, you see the laser. If it's zeroed, exactly where that round's going, maybe a little bit offset, and you're good to go. It's pretty sweet. My first experience with this was actually using this kind of outside of its scope as a pistol-mounted weapon, laser, and light. And I actually shot a night vision course in 2019 and had this mounted at 12 o'clock, so like this, on the top rail of my Sugar Weasel. And granted, it's a little bit high. So back here, I ended up having a ScalarWorks Leap mount, a high one, to get my red dot up and over. So I could shoot passively through that red dot, or I could go ahead, just reach up on the rail, activate it with my thumb, and either get that infrared illumination or that infrared laser to go ahead and make those hits. Actually worked really well for me. Fast forward, I ended up actually using this in a 2-day advanced night vision course with Coy Valdar Incorporated, and used it as intended on my secondary, this pistol right here. Did a great job. Being able to draw this thing out, immediately engage targets, well, identify ideally first, and then go ahead and engage. Whether using this to where you bring it up and it's really dark, so you need to actually use that IR light, or if there's enough illumination, just using the laser, or combination of those two, depending on what you're looking to do. One of my favorite things about this light is actually the bezel, the head of the light. Similar to like the Scout Vampire lights, in that the bezel actually moves. So right here, there's a little indicator dot, and you go ahead and take the bezel, move it out away from the light, turn it to right clockwise, and you go to white light. So then when you activate it, you get that white light, and you can move it back to center, and then if you move it out and continue to go in the other direction counterclockwise, you get over to infrared, at which point, can't do it now, there's an infrared filter in my camera, but now when you activate the light, you'll end up with that infrared light. And then down here right below the light is the laser emitter. A lot of different settings on this. So this piece down here at the very bottom at 12 o'clock below it, you essentially have this button or switch, we'll say, that moves kind of across this entire arc. So starting all the way over on the left side, it's basically everything off. And if you move it up one click to where it says laser, now when you activate it, it will activate the laser. Move it one more. When you activate it, it will activate the laser and IR light. Move it one more click, and is the IR light only, and then all the way over to that side and completely off. So that switch basically controls, when you're in that IR setting, what is happening, whether you have just your infrared laser, your infrared illuminator, or both of them together. I will say, zeroing this infrared laser, not one of my most favorite tasks. It is infinitely easier if you actually have a day optic on your pistol, whether it's RMR, Holosun, something along those lines. What you'll end up doing is, under nods, you'll have this thing you'll go ahead, put it in night vision setting, aim at whatever it is you're aiming at, and have a buddy with an incredibly tiny Allen wrench. It's like the smallest one they make. I think it's like a 0.5. Basically, put it in there, you have both windage and elevation, and give them corrections until that laser comes up and is basically co-witnessed with your aiming reticle inside your day optic. That for me has been the easiest way to get that thing zeroed. As far as output goes, on the white light side of it, putting on about 350 lumens off of 2 CR123 batteries, and has a pretty bright hot spot right in the middle, and then some splash off to the sides. When it comes to the laser, it is limited to being a class 1, civilian class 1 laser, meaning it is limited to 0.7 milliwatts. The way that works is with the military side or the civilian side, higher power lasers can do more damage to eyes. This is limited to 0.7 because it's invisible. There's no blink reflex, so if you shine in someone's eyes, they don't know to blink. So this is much safer than higher powered infrared lasers. But that said, 0.7 milliwatts. As far as the infrared light, I think it's 150 milliwatts. What does that mean? Because we don't usually measure things like that. Well, we're not going to look at this thing in a vacuum. So I ended up taking this out, and I will show it to you at different ranges, both 10, 25 yards, and finally 50 yards at a reduced silhouette. And basically showing you the white light with respect to this, as well as the SureFire X400 Ultra, kind of gold standard as far as pistol-mounted weapon lights or pistol-mounted lights go. And then also, again, because what else is white light as well as infrared light and laser? Well, Streamlight VIR2. So I took this out as well as the X400 Ultra and that Streamlight VIR2, and I will show you at those different yard lines, both the white light as well as the infrared. 10 yards, reduced silhouette, illuminated with the SureFire X400 Ultra. Here we are at 10 yards with the X400 Vampire. And 10 yards, the Streamlight VIR. Here we are at 25 yards, illuminated with the SureFire X400 Ultra. Now illuminated with the X400 Vampire by SureFire. And the Streamlight VIR. Here we are at 50 yards, reduced silhouette, illuminated with the SureFire X400 Ultra. That same silhouette, illuminated with the SureFire X400 Vampire. Silhouette illuminated at 50 yards with the Streamlight VIR. Right here at 10 yards on a reduced silhouette, the Streamlight VIR with IR illuminator and laser. "10 yards with the Streamlight X400 Vampire, illuminator and laser. Right here with the illuminator only. And 10 yards with the IR laser only from the X400 Vampire. Here we are at 25 yards with the Streamlight VIR, illuminator and laser. Here we are, 25 yards SureFire X400 Vampire, illuminator, and laser. And the X400 Vampire IR illuminator. And X400 Vampire laser. Here we are at 50 yards. Streamlight VIR, IR illuminator, and laser. "50 yards, SureFire X400 Vampire, IR illuminator, and laser." And X400 Vampire illuminator. And X400 Vampire laser. Yards, just laser. So, what are my thoughts? Honestly, I think the X400 Vampire does an amazing job. Does a good job on that white light spectrum, but then when you jump over to the infrared, being able to, have that illumination, laser, or laser and illumination, and being able to very easily, even when it's dark, even with gloves on, be like, okay, cool, I have both here. All right, now I'm over on this setting. All right, now we're totally off. Being able to manipulate that kind of on the fly, I think there's definitely value there as well. And on top of that, something that might not be important for some people, again, depends on who you are, what you're doing with your gear, but this bezel here, being able to move it to the center and have it locked out. Granted, a lot of people out on the range, having fun, doing training, whatever it may be, somewhere where there's no consequences. If you're doing something where there are consequences for a white light or infrared light ND, then that can create some problems for you. But this makes it really easy to lock it out, or if maybe you need to actually adjust that because you're going to go from one spectrum to the other, to do it with like a tactile feel. I bring this up because at one point during that Coy Valdar 2-day advanced night vision course, kind of culminated in some runs in the shoot house. So there was a run, basically working through the house, white light only. I had to go find and upgrade my equipment. Basically go scale everything up. With that, I was working through on white light until I ended up finding a primary as well as some night vision. Then it was really easy to go through, even in the dark, manipulation and adjust everything back over to where now I know I was actually going to be working in that infrared spectrum again.
One, two, three.
Is there anything I don't care for on this light? If there's something I would say that I'm not a huge fan of, is the fact that the laser emitter is down here. So if you look at this, basically the laser and the bore, two fairly significant different planes, right? Does it matter? Again, goes back to application. If you're coming into some sort of high threat situation and you need to take a low probability shot, think like a hostage shot, that can be a significant offset. But if you're also doing that, you probably have a lot of reps with this, and are probably pretty proficient in knowing what your offset is at different distances. But that's something that I'm not a huge fan of. I will say, my understanding, SureFire is actually going to come out with another setup where rather than the laser emitter being down below the light, it's going to be on top, which will address that, which is pretty cool. Something else worth mentioning is this X400 Vampire, not the easiest light to find a holster for. You can get Safariland like ALS holsters. It can be a bear trying to actually get the right one that actually works with your gun and your light. One place that's made it pretty easy is Black Point Tactical. They make a bunch of different holsters. Basically, it's drop-down menus. So it's like, hey, this light, this optic, this pistol, right hand, whatever it may be. And like, hey, that's what I'm looking for. And they support it, which is awesome. Good retention. Awesome holsters, Black Point Tactical, if you need to get a holster for this. Having said all of those things, who do I think the X400 Vampire is good for? Someone that's ultimately going to work in both those spectrums. The ability to use that white light or switch over and have infrared illuminator as well as infrared laser. It's really cool. And something that's kind of nice about this is depending on what you're doing and your budget, it allows you to scale. So the way SureFire does their switches, they usually offer numerous options. With this, kind of their standard kind of rocker arm where you can press down, it'll lock, or press up and it'll lock, or part way to include if you press forward and you can basically intermittent, momentary, but you can also switch out this back piece and they make a switch that runs to a tape switch. So if you're getting into night vision, you're like, yes, I definitely want a laser and illuminator for my pistol, and I also want all these other things for my primary, but you don't have the budget for that at once, you can go ahead and get something like this. And I've actually ran this on the bottom of a Noveske 16-inch Recon. Thing did awesome. I had it mounted on the bottom and then using that other switch, ran the tape switch up to the top at 12 o'clock on the rail, and was able to use it there. Or as I mentioned, I used it on my Sugar Weasel 300 Blackout. Basically had it mounted at 12 o'clock, used it there. Did I have something on my pistol? No, not at that time. But it basically is a stepping stone if you ultimately want to end up with something on your pistol as well as your rifle. And the fact that you can get into it and have both that IR laser and illuminator, that's pretty solid. And yeah, overall, definitely been pretty pleased with it. And lastly, if you appreciate my content and want to support it, greatly appreciate it. Whether it's liking and sharing videos or picking up some of my shirts over at Teespring or Ballistic Ink, or supporting me directly through Patreon, helps me go out, create more content for you. And if you want to support me through Patreon, I'm probably not going to answer questions in the comments section. We have an active Discord over there, really great group of guys. Happy to answer all your questions over there. And with Patreon, usually get to see videos first, which is also kind of cool. But as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time. Take your time. Nice hit.
I guess it's getting really heavy.
Okay, I understand.
Wait, I want to look through this for a little bit. Is that okay? Is that okay, Dad?
Yeah, that's okay.
I can see you.